Immediately. The words came from across the polished conference table, delivered with the casual authority of someone accustomed to ending careers before lunch. Stephanie Cross, the newly appointed Chief Security Officer of Consolidated Defense Systems, didn't even bother looking up from her tablet when she said it. Mid-30s, sharp blazer, the kind of confident posture that comes from McKinsey Consulting and zero operational security experience. She was swiping through budget spreadsheets, stylus in hand, highlighting line items like they were personal offenses. I sat there, hands folded on the table, watching her perform what she clearly thought was decisive leadership. Transition will be immediate. She continued, still not making eye contact. We're bringing security infrastructure in-house, more efficient, better cost control. Behind her sat two people I didn't recognize. A nervous-looking woman from HR clutching a tablet, and a younger man in an expensive suit who had consultant written all over him. No one from operations, no one from the original security team, just Stephanie and her imported expertise. She finally looked up, her expression somewhere between bored and irritated, like I was wasting her valuable time by still being in the room. "Before you go," she said, tapping her stylus against the tablet. "Hand over the security system, all of it. Access credentials, source code, hardware specifications. We'll need everything by end of business today." The room went quiet. The HR woman shifted uncomfortably. The consultant stopped typing on his laptop. I didn't move, just sat there keeping my expression neutral, letting the silence stretch. Stephanie's eyebrow raised slightly. "Is there a problem?" I smiled calmly, the kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. "I'm afraid I can't do that." Her stylus stopped mid-tap. "Excuse me?" "The security infrastructure," I continued, my voice steady and professional. "It's not yours to own. My name is Gordon Walsh. I'm 49 years old, and I've spent the last 25 years building corporate security systems from the ground up. Started in the Navy running cybersecurity operations at Norfolk Naval Base, places where a single system breach could mean the difference between mission security and catastrophic intelligence failure. Learned early that real security isn't about dashboards and compliance reports. It's about understanding how physical systems integrate with digital networks under real pressure, with real consequences. After I got out of the Navy, I spent 6 years working for a major defense contractor before going independent. Built my first integrated security system in 2015 for a regional government facility in Virginia. Word spread quietly through defense circles. The kind of reputation that gets you calls when someone's security posture is compromised and they need someone who actually understands the machinery behind the monitoring. I don't have a flashy website. Don't post on LinkedIn about synergistic security solutions or digital transformation. My clients find me when their perimeters are breached and conventional consultants have failed. That's how I ended up working with Consolidated Defense Systems 4 years ago. Admiral Paul Rodriguez, their chief security officer at the time, called me on a Tuesday afternoon. His voice had the tight edge of someone staring at disaster. "Gordon, we just failed our 3rd security audit in 8 months, he said. "Defense contractor certification is at risk. I need someone who understands how this actually works, not another consultant who learned security from PowerPoint presentations." Admiral Rodriguez was old school, came up through naval intelligence, spent years in classified operations before moving into corporate security. He understood that behind every clean dashboard and automated alert, there's physical infrastructure that has to function flawlessly. When I walked into their main facility that first day, the vulnerabilities were immediately obvious. Access control systems from 3 different vendors that didn't communicate. Surveillance networks running on default configurations from 218. Cybersecurity monitoring basically manual. Every shift change, they lost 90 minutes just trying to synchronize security protocols. "We've got 5 different platforms that don't integrate," Admiral Rodriguez explained, walking me through the main campus. "Physical access uses one system. Digital monitoring uses another. Threat assessment is basically guesswork. Every incident response, we're flying blind for the first hour trying to piece together what actually happened." What Stephanie Cross didn't know, what her consultant and her HR team and her entire cost optimization plan had completely missed, was that the security infrastructure running Consolidated Defense's 3 corporate campuses wasn't software sitting on their servers. It was custom-built hardware I owned personally, licensed for their operational use, controlled from equipment they'd never seen. And when they terminated my contract 3 minutes ago, they just disconnected themselves from the only thing keeping their defense contractor facilities secure. In 36 hours, that oversight would cost them everything. The contract we'd negotiated was crystal clear because I'd learned this lesson the hard way years ago. They leased operational access to my security infrastructure for $18,000 per month. I retained complete ownership of all source code, algorithms, and hardware. Admiral Rodriguez signed without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. For 4 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on schedule. The system performed exactly as designed. Admiral Rodriguez would call occasionally with questions about capacity expansion or threat assessment updates, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Then Admiral Rodriguez retired. Stephanie Cross arrived 3 weeks later with her MBA from Harvard and her McKinsey portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her first communication wasn't a greeting or introduction. Subject line, Legacy Vendor Expense Analysis. The email was pure corporate optimization language about recurring cost structures and operational dependency reduction. My invoice hadn't changed in 4 years. Same amount, same delivery schedule, same scope of work. But Stephanie saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately assumed there was inefficiency to eliminate. I replied professionally, attaching the original contract and a summary of system performance metrics over the past 48 months. Her response came back within 2 hours. Need to schedule comprehensive review of all external security dependencies. Please prepare full documentation for internal evaluation of operational systems. Operational systems. That phrase told me everything I needed to know about Stephanie Cross. She was the type who thought complex security infrastructure could be understood by reviewing executive summaries and consulting reports. I started preparing, not documentation for her evaluation, but the contingency plans I'd need when this conversation went exactly where I knew it was heading. 4 days later, the email arrived that confirmed my suspicions. Subject line, Security Architecture Documentation Request. Stephanie wanted a complete copy of the system for internal assessment and potential transition planning. She didn't want to review our service agreement. She wanted to take my system and eliminate the monthly payment. I sent back a response that was technically accurate and deliberately unhelpful. Happy to provide all materials included under your current operational license. Then I walked out to my garage workshop, sat down at the master control panel I built specifically for Consolidated Security Network, and started preparing Stephanie Cross's education in the difference between access and ownership. I spent the next 18 months building them a real system, not some off-the-shelf package that kind of works if you bend your entire operation to fit it. Custom threat detection algorithms that learned the specific behavioral patterns of their 3 facilities. Access control that actually integrated with federal compliance requirements. Surveillance monitoring that tracked every credential in real time and flagged anomalies automatically. 180,000 lines of code. Every algorithm, every database structure, every hardware interface built from scratch and tested until it ran without failure. The results were immediate and measurable. 0 security incidents, no compliance violations, credentials flowing through the network like precision clockwork. Federal auditors came through twice after implementation and found nothing to flag. Admiral Rodriguez would send me detailed quarterly reports, not corporate thank you notes, but substantive analysis of threat mitigation improvements and compliance cost reductions. He understood what he was paying for and, more importantly, what he was getting. 3 days after my documentation response, another email landed. Subject line, Intellectual Property Clarification. Stephanie wanted written confirmation that all operational security logic belonged to Consolidated Defense Systems. Operational security logic. That's what she called 4 years of custom threat detection algorithms, access control protocols, and real-time monitoring engines, like it was a commodity asset she could inventory and reassign. I screenshotted the relevant contract clause and sent it back. Bold text impossible to misinterpret. All system architecture, source code, design logic, and operational infrastructure remains the exclusive property of Gordon Walsh, licensed for operational use only. No transfer, replication, or derivative development permitted without explicit written authorization. Admiral Rodriguez had understood that clause perfectly when he signed it 4 years ago. You don't buy a custom security system like you're purchasing office equipment. You license access to infrastructure that took years to develop and requires constant maintenance from the person who built it. Stephanie's response arrived 6 hours later. We will be transitioning to internal security management effective immediately. Final payment will be processed per contract terms. Thank you for your service. That was it. No discussion, no transition planning, no acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of a three-campus defense contractor operation. Just corporate speak for "you're done and we're keeping your work." I sat at my desk for a long moment staring at that email. Then I walked out to my workshop. Inside that converted two-car garage sat the physical control infrastructure I'd built specifically for Consolidated's network. Custom hardware interfaces with dedicated circuits for every major subsystem, access control, surveillance coordination, threat assessment, compliance monitoring, all of it flowing through boards I'd assembled and programmed by hand. Stephanie Cross had no idea that Control Panel existed. She thought the security system was software running on Consolidated servers. She was about to learn the difference between a user interface and actual operational control. 6 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Security Transition Meeting, Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. No agenda, no context, just a meeting title suggesting she expected this to be a simple handoff conversation. I joined the video call 3 minutes early. Professional appearance, clean button-down shirt, background showing my home office with my Navy service certificates and cybersecurity credentials visible on the wall. Stephanie logged in 2 minutes late, settling into her chair with the satisfied expression of someone who thinks they've solved a complex problem with simple cost cutting. Ryan Foster from IT joined next, according to his screen name. Then a woman who looked fresh out of business school, tablet, ready for notes. Admiral Rodriguez was nowhere on the call, not surprising. He'd probably advised against this entire approach, and Stephanie had decided his operational experience wasn't relevant to modern business strategy. "Gordon, thanks for joining." Stephanie began, her tone suggesting this was routine administrative business. "We've made the decision to bring security management in-house. Appreciate all your work up to this point, but we're ready to assume direct operational control." Assume control. As if reviewing compliance reports was the same thing as running the underlying infrastructure. I kept my expression neutral. "You're terminating the license agreement, correct?" Stephanie said, leaning back like she expected praise for her decisive leadership. "We'll need complete handover of all system repositories, architectural documentation, and back-end credentials. Standard transition process." Ryan nodded along. The note-taker typed something into her tablet. They had this choreographed like routine vendor management. "You're not licensed to access the core infrastructure," I said calmly. "Your agreement covers operational use of system outputs. You never purchased ownership rights." Stephanie's confident smile faltered slightly. "We paid for development of this security system, Gordon. That makes it company intellectual property. This is standard business practice." "You paid for operational access to a functioning security network," I replied. "You never bought the underlying technology. That distinction is outlined explicitly in Section 7 of your contract." She glanced off camera, probably pulling up the contract on another screen. I waited while she scanned through language that Admiral Rodriguez had reviewed carefully with their legal team 4 years ago. "Look," she said, attempting to regain control. "We understand there might be some technical nuances here, but we're prepared to handle operations internally going forward. Just provide whatever documentation you have so we can maintain service continuity." "I'll provide everything you're legally entitled to receive," I said. Nothing more. The silence across the video call was sharp. Ryan looked uncomfortable. The note-taker stopped typing. Stephanie's jaw tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the smooth asset transfer she'd planned. "That'll be fine," she said curtly, trying to end the call quickly. "We'll expect full delivery by close of business today." I didn't respond, just sat there looking directly into the camera while she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could complicate her timeline further. The screen went black. I closed my laptop. Stephanie Cross thought she understood cybersecurity because she could navigate software dashboards and review quarterly performance metrics. She had zero comprehension of the physical infrastructure, the custom hardware, the dedicated communication protocols, or the specialized knowledge required to keep it all functioning. She was about to get an expensive education. I walked out to my workshop and powered up the control panel. Every indicator showed green. Threat monitoring synchronized across 3 campuses. Access credentials updating in real time, surveillance networks flowing smoothly through the integrated framework. The entire consolidated defense security perimeter running exactly as I designed it. Then I started building Stephanie's transition package. Professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical language. User interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. Everything polished and official and completely useless without access to the underlying control systems. I spent 6 hours creating exactly the kind of deliverable Stephanie expected to receive. Visual materials that would make her think she'd gotten what she needed to operate independently. Interface mock-ups with animated displays. System diagrams showing logical flow of operations. All of it disconnected from actual infrastructure. By 5:30 p.m., I had a comprehensive package ready. I attached it to an email with a single line. System interface documentation provided per contract termination. Back-end infrastructure access not included per licensing agreement. I hit send and watched the message disappear into Consolidated's corporate email system, where Stephanie would soon discover the difference between owning a control panel and owning the engine. Then I walked back to my workshop, sat down at the master control console, and placed my hand on the primary power relay. The real education was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to Riverside Diner like it was any other Friday. Small place, downtown, good coffee, quiet corner booths where you could work without interruption. The owner, Betty, had been serving me the same order for 3 years. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar, wheat toast. She nodded when I walked in, poured the coffee without asking, and left me alone with my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main operations dashboard. Every indicator glowed green. Access control functioning smoothly across 87 synchronized entry points at 3 facilities. 1,847 active credentials receiving real-time authorization updates. Everything Stephanie Cross thought she now controlled was actually flowing through the custom hardware sitting in my garage workshop 12 minutes away. At 9:34 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Stephanie. Having difficulty accessing root management interface. Please provide admin credentials immediately. I stared at the message for about 10 seconds, then deleted it without responding. At 9:41 a.m., I toggled the master relay switch. The map on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Access synchronization stopped mid-cycle. The entire consolidated defense security network just stopped communicating. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 4 years of perfect security coordination die in complete silence. The system didn't crash or throw error messages. I designed it to disconnect gracefully. No alarms, no warning indicators, no dramatic shutdown sequences. Just clean separation from all operational control. If someone tried to restart the user interface, it would load perfectly and display the last cached data, creating the illusion that everything was still working. But underneath, nothing was actually communicating with anything else. For the first 15 minutes, nothing appeared wrong to casual observation. Dashboard displays still showed green status indicators. Security supervisors looking at their screens would see normal access patterns and threat assessments. Guards already on duty would continue following their last received protocols, but no new data was flowing anywhere. I pulled up the security camera feeds I'd integrated into the monitoring system. At 9:58 a.m., I watched an employee badge swipe at building a fail-to-register authorization. The access control protocol was frozen, unable to process real-time credential validation. At 10:07 a.m., 2 employees with conflicting clearance levels both gained access to the same restricted area. According to their dashboard displays, both had valid authorizations for Lab 7 at the northern facility. The conflict prevention algorithm wasn't running. By 10:22 a.m., the ripple effects became visible across the network. Badge readers malfunctioning at 11 major checkpoints. Surveillance blind spots forming at facility entrances. Security schedules showing everything synchronized and operational, but ground reality telling a completely different story. I refreshed my email inbox. Nothing yet. They were probably still trying to figure out why the root management system wasn't responding to login attempts. At 10:39 a.m., the first confused email arrived. Subject line: Quick question, access sync delay. Hey Gordon, seeing some weird lag on credential updates. Can you take a look when you get a chance? Thanks, Corey Davison. Corey was one of their senior facility coordinators, former Air Force, good instincts. He'd figure out what was happening eventually, but right now he was just seeing symptoms. I didn't respond. By 10:55 a.m., the emails were arriving every few minutes. Badge readers not refreshing. Surveillance gaps at Western Gate. Multiple personnel showing same clearance conflicts. Still polite, still assuming this was some kind of technical glitch that could be resolved with a quick phone call. At 11:08 a.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown number with consolidated area code. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a different number, then a third. The panic was beginning. I pulled up the system connection logs and watched failed authentication requests hammering uselessly against the demonstration package Stephanie's IT team was trying to operate as live infrastructure. Hundreds of failed handshake attempts, every request bouncing back empty because there was no actual system behind the interface. They were trying to run facility security using only a photograph of the control panel. By 11:43 a.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. Access control failures at 19 major entry points across 3 facilities. Surveillance coverage conflicts at 23 different monitoring stations. Security protocols falling behind by an average of 78 minutes across the network. And somewhere in a corporate office, Stephanie Cross was probably staring at user interface screens that still showed everything functioning normally, wondering why reality didn't match her data. At 11:51 a.m., an email arrived with red priority flags. Subject line, URgent, critical security failure, multiple access violations, no response from monitoring controls, minus Freliance completely desynchronized. This is affecting compliance status and federal contracts. Need immediate support. Please respond ASAP. Ryan Foster, IT Director. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand this wasn't a minor technical issue. I closed the email without reading the rest and checked the impact calculator I'd built into my monitoring tools. Conservative estimate, 125,000 in daily losses from compliance violations, failed audits, and contractual breaches. Real number was probably higher once you factored in federal certification penalties and insurance claims. My phone buzzed with a text from Stephanie. Emergency situation. Call immediately. I deleted the message. At 12:14 p.m., the phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed Consolidated Defense Legal Department. I declined the call and watched it roll to voicemail. Then another call from a blocked number, declined. By 1 p.m., I had 67 missed calls and 34 unread voicemails. The 3-campus defense contractor operation was experiencing what the military would call a cascading systems failure. Nothing was coordinating with anything else. Security personnel were making access decisions based on stale information. Supervisors were issuing conflicting protocols. Facility managers were trying to manually assign clearance levels while their computers insisted everything was running smoothly. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Emergency System Restoration Proposal, terms payment due via wire transfer before reactivation rate, 90,000 lump sum for immediate restoration service, duration, 72-hour emergency window, conditions, full acknowledgement of service terms and intellectual property ownership. I attached the document to an email addressed to Stephanie Cross, legal counsel, and the operations director. Subject line, emergency restoration services available. Then I hit send and ordered another cup of coffee. The education phase was complete. Now came the negotiation. At 1:31 p.m., the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call 2:00 p.m. Eastern. Immediate response required. No polite language, no corporate pleasantries, just panic in capital letters. I joined the call at 1:57 p.m. Professional appearance, calm demeanor, sitting in my home office with my Navy service certificates visible in the background. The screen filled with stressed executives in various stages of crisis management. Ashley Cooper, some kind of senior legal counsel, joined first. Sleeves rolled up, the expression of a woman who'd spent the last 3 hours in emergency meetings. Then came more attorneys, one taking rapid notes, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Corey Davidson, the facility coordinator I'd worked with during original implementation, appeared next. Former military like me, understood systems thinking. He looked exhausted, but unsurprised, like he'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Stephanie Cross was already in the call when I connected, positioned in a small window at the bottom of the screen. Muted microphone, tight body language that suggested she'd been removed from leadership of her own crisis. Nobody said hello. Ashley cleared her throat and launched straight into damage control. Gordon, appreciate you joining on short notice. We're dealing with what appears to be a significant operational disruption. Our entire security network is essentially paralyzed, and we need to understand our options for immediate restoration. I nodded once. Your service agreement was terminated yesterday. If you want operational access restored, the terms are outlined in my emergency proposal. One of the attorneys leaned into her camera. Gordon, we've reviewed your proposal. Some of the financial terms seemed disproportionate given the circumstances. Emergency response pricing, I replied. Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours. Corey Davidson spoke up, his voice tight with controlled stress. Gordon, we've got 3 facilities completely offline. Security breaches accumulating across all campuses, federal compliance violations by the hour. Our defense contracts are already under review. He glanced at something off-screen. 2 major clients have called threatening contract termination if we don't restore normal security posture by Monday morning. Ashley jumped back in. Look, we understand there may have been some miscommunication during the transition process, but we need to focus on solutions here. Can we discuss modification of the emergency terms? No, the single word hung in the digital space. No explanation, no negotiation, no corporate back and forth, just a simple statement of fact. Stephanie finally unmuted her microphone. This is unreasonable, Gordon. You're holding our entire operation hostage over a contract dispute. I looked directly into the camera. You terminated my services and demanded handover of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what your contract entitled you to receive. Nothing more, nothing less. She started to respond, but Ashley cut her off with a sharp look. One of the attorneys tried a different approach. Would you consider a modified payment structure? Perhaps installments over a specified period. Wire transfer only, full payment before reactivation. Corey leaned forward. Gordon, what's the timeline for restoration once payment clears? 45 minutes, I said. System comes back online immediately after I confirm funds transfer. Ashley looked at her legal team, then back at the camera. We need 15 minutes to discuss internally. Can you hold? I nodded. I'll be here. They clicked into a breakout room, leaving me alone on the call with Stephanie's muted video square. She stared at the camera like she wanted to say something. Didn't. I took a sip of coffee and checked my email. The emergency proposal had been forwarded to at least 15 different people in their organization. Finance department, legal department, operations, risk management, even their federal liaison officer. Everyone trying to understand how a routine vendor termination had turned into a company-threatening crisis. 12 minutes later, they returned to the main call. Ashley's expression had shifted from desperation to resignation. Legal is initiating the wire transfer now, should complete within 60 minutes. Let me know when it hits my account, I said. 54 minutes later, my banking app chimed with an incoming transfer notification. Payment confirmed, amount correct, no complications. I walked out to my workshop, sat down at the master control panel, and flipped the relay switch back to active position. Every screen in my garage lit up with green indicators. Access control reconnecting in sequence, threat assessments resuming, surveillance networks updating in real time, credential authorization coming back online. The 3-campus defense contractor security perimeter came back to life like someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a major federal operation. I returned to the video call where everyone was still waiting. System is operational, I announced. All services restored. Ashley nodded. We appreciate the rapid response. I didn't do this rapidly, I said evenly. I did this according to the terms you agreed to. Nobody responded. Stephanie's camera was still on, but she hadn't said a word since her hostage comment. I left the call without ceremony. Protect what you create before you're forced to defend it. Read every contract, understand every clause. Know the difference between licensing access and surrendering ownership. When someone tries to take what's yours, don't get angry, don't get loud. Just smile calmly and say, I'm afraid I can't do that. It's not yours to own. Then watch them learn the difference between confidence and control.